All right. So the purpose of this little demo is I wanted to talk about pipenv, and I wanted to do this with the five W's and an H process. So the who, what, where, when, why, and how of pipenv. And I'm recording this because I'll post it later for the rest of the channel to see and talk about and answer any questions. So first of all, who should be concerned about pipenv? Any developer who is building something in Python who wants to be able to hand the project off to somebody else and wants control over the dependencies that are being installed should be concerned about pipenv. So that's the who. So I think that basically is anyone on our team who's doing anything from the command line with Python. So the who out of the way. The what. What is pipenv? So pipenv is a tool that was created by Kenneth Reitz, who's the person behind the awesome requests library in Python and some other tools. And it adds a more friendly wrapper around two things that have traditionally been awkward and difficult to do and manage in Python, which is virtual environments and dependency management. So I think if you're familiar with using pip, you understand kind of the pip part of pipenv. Pip being a package installer for people who are watching this and might not be familiar with it. It allows you to install various Python libraries from the command line. But what pipenv does that I think is super helpful is two things. It will take it provides a nice wrapper around around creating a virtual environment. For people who've done any type of Python stuff around virtual environments, you'll be familiar with using virtualenv. So pipenv adds a much nicer wrapper around that. And it also does something that pip itself doesn't do, and easy install and some of the other package management tools for Python. It will create a lock file for the dependencies. And the advantage of a lock file is for those who aren't familiar with it, I know about some of this stuff because in the PHP community, there's a tool called Composer that basically does the same thing that pipenv is doing, where you can ask it to install packages. In the PHP world, things are divided up into kind of a vendor / package name, whereas in pip, it's generally just the package name. But what it will do when you go and install, if you ask it to install a specific package, behind the scenes, pip will try to find if there's any dependencies for the package you're trying to install. It will look to find out what combination of packages and dependencies will meet your requirements. So if you ever use pip to do like pip install some other tool, and you'll see that it pulls in like 10, 15, 20 other packages, what packages it pulls in are all determined behind the scenes as it tries and figures out what versions of specific dependencies does it need to install the one that you're looking for. And so why a lock file is so helpful is that the lock file, you generate it using pipenv. It will go and you can generate a list of here's the exact versions of all the packages I want, not just the dependency I've specifically installed. So let me show you kind of what I'm talking about. I've been fooling around with Kubernetes stuff. So I'm going to uninstall the Kubernetes package. Is it not in there? Did I not install it? What did I install? Did I misinstall it? Skipping Kubernetes is not installed. Okay, I know why I'm not inside the virtual environment. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. So that's the who and that's the what. So the where. Where do we use it? Clearly, it's all command line centric. And because it's command line centric, it lends itself to being easily used with continuous deployment and continuous integration systems. We've already built build scripts that are running on Jenkins that use pipenv to create our virtual environment and then to install all our dependencies. So there's who, the what, the where. The why, well, the why kind of mentioned already. Keeping track of all this stuff has been a little bit harsh. Pip didn't always play nicely with virtualenv. So by creating a tool that combines the two of them together, again, it's like one less tool that we have to worry about, one less thing we have to pay attention. the wrappers that pipenv provides around using both pip and virtualenv. Maybe it's a taste thing, but I find it's so much nicer. And again, the fewer things I have to worry about, the better. So who, what, the where, when, the why, and now the how. This is how we can get to this. So if I'm looking at this project I've been doing, which is creating some load tests for Kinto as part of my second half goal to create a better load testing tool than what we have already. So if you look in the directory, you can see we have two files we should be looking at. That concern ourselves, the pip file and the pip file lock file. So as you install dependencies,
you may want to share the terminal window.
Oh, I might not. Oh, you can't see it? Oh, wow. I forgot to share it. One moment. That would be really helpful, wouldn't it? I thought it was automatically sharing it. And I can just share the terminal with you folks. All right. Can you see, for those on the video, can you see the terminal window now?
Something is appearing. Yes, lo and behold.
Yeah, there's a little bit laggy. Also, I'm going to make sure like my backup thing isn't running. Let me pause. Yeah, that always seems to be the thing that kills. Okay, so you can see my terminal window. So I did an ls, and up here you can see that there is a pip file and a lock file. So the pip file, if you've ever used pip install and you do the -r to use a requirements file, the format is somewhat similar, but it kind of expands it where it'll provide information about like where you want to point, what PyPy version that you're using, and the PyPI is just the home for package management in Python. You can also specify, if you see here on line 8, you can see that you can specify some packages that are only installed in a development environment. So you would probably want to do that for things like if you had a library that you're building and you're going to then distribute it, you might want to have things like PyTest only being available in development. And then down here you can see right now, the only packages I have in here are Flake 8, PyFXA, and Molotov, which is the load testing tool. And then it requires that we're using version 3.7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new environment using pipenv so you can kind of see how this works. So I have pipenv installed. There's instructions on the website on how to install it. There's a couple of different ways. You can actually use pip to install pipenv, which I guess is a bit meta. But if you just do pipenv, it provides you with a couple of options. I'll scroll back because there's a lot of stuff. The documentation is quite good. Initially, what we really need to worry about is what version of Python you're going to want to create. And everything else is just layering on top of it. So I'm going to just delete the existing one using this --rm command. And I will recreate one from scratch. So pipenv, see if it recognizes that I have one here already. Yeah, and one of the things I actually also like about pipenv is that rather than locate the virtual environment, if you use virtualenv, when you set it up, you say, I want all these things to be in a specific directory, and that directory usually ends up inside your project. Pipenv moves those things out of the project and into your home directory. And by default, it'll put it in .local on my Mac OS operating system. I'm not sure what it does for Windows or Linux. I'm assuming it's something similar. And part of the reason why I like that is that you can actually create virtual environments and share them between projects. So if you set up like a Python 3.5 environment that you like, and you don't need to add any more custom packages, any other project that you're using that needs Python 3.5 and nothing else, you can just say, hey, use this virtual environment that I've already created. So it showed that we removed it, so I'm just going to create a new one. So pipenv, the command is, I can do something like this where I say I want to create a virtual environment and I want to use Python 3.7. So I'm going to create it with that, and it's going to go and look. And again, as with most of Kenneth Reitz's projects, the informational messages you get are great. It'll show you tell you what it's doing. You can see that it's using Python 3.7. I'm using pipenv to manage the different versions of Python. You can specify a path to a Python interpreter if it's located someplace else. So then it just says it's using virtualenv and gives you a bunch of information here. So now what we have is our virtual environment created. Now, I have that pip file in place already, so I can just go pipenv install, and it will look in that pip file, and now it's using the lock file, which means it's going to skip a bunch of work in the background as it tries to figure out exactly what dependencies need to be installed. It knows exactly every package and every version. So we're just going to let it run here. And when this is done, I'll show you what the lock file looks like. There, so it's just doing some cleanup stuff in behind, and should be done in a second. And it'll even tell you very nicely to go into that shell that you've created, the virtual environment, use pipenv shell instead of doing the source, using the source command, and you're sourcing the activate script that virtualenv provides. So I will just go into there. And gives you again some more information. And now, in my terminal window here, I have my I'm using a Z shell or Z shell for the Canadians, and it tells me over here that the name of the virtual environment that I'm in, so I can double check I'm in this Kinto load tests one. So if I look at the log, I'll show you what the log file looks like. So as you can see, it shows basically. Takes what's in that pip file and then expands it and shows what hash we're looking when we're trying to compare our version to make sure we're getting the correct one. So you can see there's a lot of information in here with all the different packages and what hashes are compatible. And so that's the thing about pip. If it sometimes sits there and runs for like a super long time while it tries to figure out what combination of dependencies that it needs, the lock file means that you don't have to worry about that. It's already pre-computed that. So we're inside our virtual environment now, and usually the way I always confirm that, I ask it to tell me which version of Python am I running, and I look and see. You can see here, yep, it's inside this Kinto load tests one. So I think I have Kubernetes in here already, so I'm just going to uninstall it. Oh, it's not in there. I guess I didn't do it in the lock file. All right, well, say I want to add in a library. I just go inside. I can even do this from outside, which is why I like it. So let me go here. I'm going to exit the virtual environment. And then I'm going to go pipenv install Kubernetes. And so what it's doing behind the scenes, it's looking at the virtual environment that's already been created, and now it's installing the Kubernetes tools because I'm going to want to manipulate my packages from inside the virtual environment. And you can see it just blasted a whole bunch of stuff out. Once this is done, I'm going to scroll back and kind of show you what it was doing in the background. It's locking dependencies. Anytime it wants to do it. I guess waiting for packages to install is the new compiling. Okay, now you can see it's doing stuff. So if we scroll back real quick while it's running, I'll show you what kind of happens. So when I tell it I wanted to install Kubernetes, it uses pip's infrastructure, talks to PyPy and says, hey, what are all the packages that I need to satisfy this requirement that I want to install Kubernetes? And in this case, I didn't specify a version. You can specify versions using pipenv. The man pages and the actual, if you do pipenv-h, will tell you how. So you can see it's going to go and grab all these different versions of packages. It grabs Kubernetes 7 and says, okay, now I need URL lib and I need this ADAL package, and just installs everything just like it would be doing if it was using pip. And if we scroll down, you can see where it actually goes and automatically adds Kubernetes to my pip file. Then it also says, hey, your lock file is now out of date because we've installed some new packages. So it manually goes and updates it. It locks all the dependencies, the dev dependencies. It locks all the packages. It updates the lock files. Then it installs everything else. And then puts it in the virtual environment. And now I just go pipenv shell. And I should be able to find the Kubernetes stuff. If I go just run Python in REPL mode, and I just go, if I go import Kubernetes, it should say something. So now I know I have Kubernetes installed in this virtual environment. So that's basically the nice high-level view of pipenv. Pipenv itself is the recommended tool going forward from the Python Software Foundation on what they want people to use for package management. So I guess they're hoping to phase out easy install and other methods of installing packages. So I know I just dumped a whole bunch of data down. Questions? No questions. So we're all pipenv experts. All right, cool. Let me stop the recording.